You gather before me tonight with questions burning quietly in your hearts, questions that whisper in the silence of your inner life. You have felt the tremor of anxiety and thought it was the whisper of intuition. You have mistaken the trembling of your nerves for the voice of your soul. I tell you now, my friends, this confusion is not accidental. It is part of the great drama of the psyche, the ceaseless interplay between the shadow and the light, between the archetypes that dwell within you and the conscious mind that struggles to discern their messages. When you feel anxiety, it is as if a restless current moves beneath your skin, urging you forward, but never telling you clearly where to go. It is the unease of something unresolved, a call from the unconscious that has not yet taken shape. Intuition, however, is different. Intuition is not restless. It is certain. It does not agitate. It reveals. It comes not as a frantic push, but as a knowing, as if the world has already unfolded its secret before you. Yet, in the heightened sensitivity of the empath, these two forces, anxiety and intuition, become tangled like roots beneath the earth. The empath feels so deeply, absorbs so much of the psychic atmosphere around them, that their anxiety often masquerades as foresight. They sense something, but is it the truth of the moment or the echo of their own fear? Consider a dream. A woman walks through a forest. The trees press close around her, and she hears footsteps behind. Her heart races. She is certain someone follows. She cannot see. She cannot know. This is anxiety, the haunting of what might be, the shadow projected outward. But in another dream, she walks the same forest, and without fear, she turns before the footsteps sound. Already knowing what is to come, this is intuition, the silent voice of the psyche aligned with the deeper order of things. Do you feel the difference? Anxiety blinds and agitates. Intuition sees and reveals. Why then do you, the empath, confuse them? It is because your sensitivity makes you porous. The psychic boundaries that protect others are thinner in you. You feel the moods, the wounds, the projections of those around you. Their fear becomes your trembling. Their confusion becomes your storm, and in that storm, your own unconscious rises, stirred like leaves in the wind. What you call intuition may simply be the resonance of another's shadow echoing through your nervous system. You think you have foreseen a betrayal, a disaster, a truth hidden in silence, but perhaps you have only absorbed the unspoken terror of someone near you. This is why individuation, the path toward wholeness, demands that you learn to distinguish the voices within. Not every whisper in the psyche is the voice of the self. Many are echoes of complexes. Many are fragments of shadow. If you do not discern, you will mistake every flicker of anxiety for the call of destiny. And in doing so, you will be led not by intuition, but by neurosis. The empath is especially vulnerable here, for empathy, without discernment, becomes possession. Let me tell you a story from the lives of my patients. A young man once came to me, trembling with what he called visions. He said he knew when misfortune was about to fall upon others. He felt it as a heaviness in his chest, as a sudden darkness in his dreams. He called it intuition. But as we spoke, I learned he had grown up with a father whose anger was unpredictable, who erupted without warning. As a child, he had learned to scan the smallest signs, the twitch of a hand, the silence at dinner, the sudden sharpness of tone. His body became an instrument of survival, alert to every subtle shift. Now, as a man, he called this hypervigilance intuition. But it was in truth the residue of trauma, the echo of anxiety embedded in his nervous system. His visions were not glimpses of the future, but projections of his past. How often is this your case? You feel the tightness in your chest and say, "My intuition warns me." But perhaps it is your wound that warns you, your childhood shadow calling out from beneath. Intuition arises not from fear, but from integration. Anxiety is the voice of the complex. Intuition is the voice of the self. In the archetypal realm, anxiety belongs to the trickster. It misleads, it exaggerates, it casts shadows larger than the figures that make them. The trickster thrives in uncertainty, and he delights in confusing you, making you mistake your trembling for a prophecy. Intuition, however, belongs to the wise old men, the archetype of knowledge, or to the anima and animus, when they are integrated, carrying messages from the unconscious to the conscious mind. The wise old man does not speak in the language of panic. He speaks in clarity, in symbols, in dreams that resonate with truth. To follow the trickster is to live in perpetual agitation. To follow the wise old man is to step into alignment with your inner order. Now let us enter more deeply into the psychology of the empath. To be empathic is to live with an open threshold between the conscious and unconscious, between self and other. The empath is like the figure of the wounded healer, the archetype of Chiron, whose wound never heals, but grants him sight into the wounds of others. The empath senses because they suffer. They know the unspoken because they are attuned to the vibrations of pain. Yet this gift is dangerous if untempered, without boundaries. The empath becomes an empty vessel for the projections of others. And in this emptiness, anxiety blooms. Think of water. If a vessel is strong, it holds water clearly, reflecting the sky. But if the vessel is cracked, water seeps in and out, and the surface is never still. The empath without discernment is this cracked vessel. Every drop of another's fear enters. Every vibration of another's wound ripples across their surface. In such turbulence, how can one tell the difference between true intuition and borrowed anxiety? This is why the work of the empath is shadow work. You must descend into your own depth, confront the hidden wounds that make you porous, for it is not empathy itself that confuses, but the unresolved shadows that cling to it. When you mistake anxiety for intuition, you are listening to your shadow, not yourself. The shadow loves to masquerade as wisdom, to cloak itself in urgency to tell you, beware, danger comes, and often you believe it. For the body trembles, and the dream disturbs, but true intuition does not close itself in terror. It is calm, it is simple, it is a knowing that requires no agitation to prove itself. Imagine standing before a mountain. Anxiety says, the mountain will crush you. The path is dangerous. You will fail. Intuition says, this is the way. Take one step, then another. Anxiety makes your heart race. Intuition steadies your breath. Anxiety isolates. Intuition connects. And so, the correction I bring to you tonight is not to discard your sensitivity, but to refine it, to walk the path of individuation. You must become an alchemist of your own inner states. You must separate the lead of anxiety from the gold of intuition. You must learn to hold your feelings up to the light of reflection and ask, is this the shadow or the self-speaking? Is this the voice of my wound or the whisper of my wholeness? Dreams will guide you if you learn their language. The dream of anxiety is always restless, fragmented, filled with pursuit, falling, losing. The dream of intuition is symbolic, resonant, archetypal. It shows you images that linger with meaning, that feel not like chaos, but like revelation. One dream may wake you sweating in fear. The other may leave you silent, knowing something deep has been spoken. Learn to distinguish these two, and you will no longer mistake anxiety for intuition. You see, anxiety is always about the ego. It fears what might happen to me, what might be lost, what might be threatened. Intuition, by contrast, belongs to the self, and the self is not afraid. The self knows it is eternal, that no event can undo its essence. Anxiety is bound to time and circumstance. Intuition is rooted in eternity. When you feel agitation, ask yourself, is this my ego trembling or myself speaking? I want you to feel this distinction not only in your mind but in your body. Close your eyes and recall a moment when you felt anxious. Notice the quickening pulse, the tight chest, the restless thoughts. Now recall a moment of true intuition, when you simply knew what to do or what was coming. How did your body feel then? Likely it was calm, even if the knowledge was difficult. Intuition may reveal something painful, but it does not agitate, it clarifies. Anxiety clouds, intuition clears. This, my friends, is the Jungian correction. Empathy is not intuition, and anxiety is not prophecy. You must know the difference, or you will live enslaved to your complexes, mistaking every fear for a divine message. The work of individuation calls you higher. It calls you to separate fear from foresight, shadow from symbol, anxiety from intuition. Only then can you walk the path with clear eyes and steady heart. The empath's mistake lies not in feeling too much, but in believing every feeling to be revelation. The psyche is a vast landscape, and within it dwell countless voices, ancestral memories, forgotten wounds, archetypal figures and the murmurings of collective fear, the unconscious does not always speak in truth, it speaks in multiplicity. Some voix se deceive, some clarify, some beg for attention because they are neglected. If you confuse them all as intuition, you will wander endlessly through psychic fog. Intuition is not every voice. It is the orchestration that binds them. I recall a woman who came to me in great distress. She believed her anxieties were prophecies. Each time she felt panic, she said it must be because something terrible was about to happen. She lived in a constant state of waiting for disaster. In analysis, we uncovered that her anxiety was bound to the archetype of the devouring mother, a shadow image of care twisted into suffocation. Her own mother had filled her with fear, saying the world was dangerous. Men were predators. Success was perilous. Each tremor of her nervous system was not intuition, but the echo of this archetype within her unconscious. Only when she learned to see this figure for what it was, could she begin to separate genuine inner knowing from inherited shadow. You see, archetypes do not only guide, they also ensnare. The empath who mistakes anxiety for intuition is often under the sway of the wounded child, the orphan or the victim archetype. These figures whisper, "You are not safe, danger lurks." You must anticipate betrayal. Their voices carry urgency, and urgency is easily mistaken for truth. Yet, real intuition carries no urgency. It is like the image of the old Taoist sage. He sits by the river, unmoved. In simply points, he does not tremble, he does not cry out, he indicates the way, and his silence gives it power. The empath, because of their heightened perception, often lives in the liminal space between their unconscious and the collective unconscious. They are receivers of signals, but not all signals are messages for them. Imagine a radio picking up every frequency at once. The empath experiences this chaos internally and calls it intuition, but intuition is not chaos. It is a clear station that emerges when the noise is tuned away. Thus, individuation for the empath requires not less feeling, but discernment of feeling. Anxiety arises primarily from complexes. Complexes are splintered pieces of the psyche that carry emotional charges. They are like actors who rush onto the stage of your consciousness, demanding attention. The parental complex, the inferiority complex, the abandonment complex. All these rush forward in moments of stress. When a complex is triggered, you feel anxiety, but the complex is not the self. It is only a fragment cut off from the whole. To mistake its trembling for intuition is to let the fragment rule the kingdom. Let us descend into myth, for myth carries the wisdom of the unconscious in its purest form. Think of Cassandra, the prophetess of Troy. She was given the gift of true foresight, but cursed so that no one would believe her. She lived in torment, seeing disaster and unable to avert it. Anxiety is like Cassandra's curse. It shows you visions that are not believed, not grounded. often not even true. Intuition, however, is like Tiresias, the blind seer who, though deprived of ordinary sight, saw into the truth of things. His visions were not frantic warnings, but revelations aligned with the deeper order of life. To live mistaking anxiety for intuition is to become Cassandra, tormented by endless dread. To live guided by intuition is to become Tiresias, blind to appearances, yet attuned to truth. The empath often feels caught between these myths. They feel cursed by their sensitivity, burdened by knowing too much, or rather by feeling too much. But what they know is not always knowledge. Sometimes it is the weight of projection. When you are in the presence of another who represses their fear, their body leaks it, their unconscious projects it, and you, as an empath, absorb it. This absorption feels like inner truth, but it is only borrowed fear. You then mistake it for foresight, when in reality it is contagion. There is, too, the matter of the body. Anxiety lives in the body as trembling, tightening, shortness of breath. Intuition, though also sensed bodily, manifests differently. It may be a calm certainty in the gut, a stillness in the heart, a sense of alignment. Anxiety is heat and agitation. Intuition is cool and steady. The body does not lie, but it speaks in many languages. You must learn which language belongs to which voice. In my own dreams, I often encountered symbols that differentiated these states. When anxiety dominated, my dreams were chaotic, filled with pursuit and collapse. When intuition spoke, my dreams carried luminous images, a mandala, a wise figure, a river flowing in silence. The dream reveals whether you are possessed by a complex or guided by the self. That is why I urge you always to pay attention to your dreams. They are the nightly theater where the psyche reveals its truths and deceptions. You must also remember the role of projection. When you carry unacknowledged fear, you project it onto the world. You then call your projection intuition. But it is not foresight. It is merely the shadow painted across the outer world. To correct this, you must draw the projection back and own it. If you fear betrayal and see betrayal everywhere, ask, is this a truth about the other? Or is it my shadow warning me of my own wound? Until you reclaim projection, you cannot trust your so-called intuition. Let me give another example. A man told me that each time he entered a new relationship, he felt a surge of dread. Convinced his partner would leave him, he called it intuition, but analysis revealed that his mother had abandoned him as a child, and this dread was the shadow of that event. His anxiety was not intuition about his partners. It was the voice of the abandoned child within. When he confronted this shadow and began to heal it, his relationships changed, his dread lessened. And when intuition truly spoke, when a partner was dishonest, he felt it not as panic but as clarity. Clarity is the mark of intuition. Confusion is the mark of anxiety. Anxiety multiplie questions. while intuition quiets them. Anxiety demands reaction, while intuition waits in stillness. Anxiety keeps you circling the labyrinth. Intuition shows the thread of Ariadne leading outward. This is the correction. To know that not every trembling is sacred, not every fear is foresight, not every sensation is revelation. You must sift, you must separate the wheat from the chaff within your psyche. And this is not done by suppression, but by reflection. To reflect is to hold the feeling, to ask what archetype speaks here, what complex is active, what dream image accompanies this state. In doing so, you cultivate discernment. The path of individuation is nothing less than this great discernment. It is the sorting of voices, the weaving of fragments into wholeness. And for the empath, this work is vital, for without it, your gift becomes your prison. Your sensitivity becomes the trickster's plaything, and you will wander from panic to panic, believing yourself prophetic. But with discernment, your gift becomes luminous. You will no longer confuse the storm with the whisper. You will stand in the storm and yet hear the whisper clearly. There is another dimension to this confusion of anxiety and intuition that we must consider. The collective unconscious. You are not only a vessel of your personal history, but also a participant in humanity's larger psychic field. The empath, more than most, is tuned to this field like an instrument, sensitive to the faintest resonance. Collective fear, collective unrest, collective shadow, these sweep through you as if they were your own. You live in a time of much anxiety. The world trembles with uncertainty, with the collapse of old structures and the birth of new. When you, as an empath, feel this trembling, you may mistake it for personal intuition. You say, I sense disaster is coming. And perhaps you are right, but not because your personal destiny dictates it. Rather, you are feeling the anxiety of the age, the shadow of a collective archetype stirring. This is why it is dangerous to identify too closely with every sensation. The collective unconscious contains powers that can overwhelm the individual. Archetypes rise like gods, demanding worship, demanding obedience. Anxiety is often the signal that an archetype is near, pressing upon consciousness. But unless you can differentiate, you will mistake this archetypal pressure for a personal message. You will take the trembling of an age and call it your private intuition. And in doing so, you will burden yourself with the weight of the world. The myth of Atlas speaks here. Atlas bore the weight of the heavens upon his shoulders. And many empaths live as Atlas, believing it is their intuition that burdens them, when it is in truth the collective weight they carry. To correct this, you must learn to recognize when you are channeling something larger than yourself. When anxiety comes, ask, is this mine or is this the world's? If it is collective, you may bear witness to it, but you need not confuse it with your own destiny. This discernment is not easy. It requires the cultivation of inner silence, the ability to step back and watch the currents move without being swept away. Meditation, active imagination, dream analysis. These are tools that allow you to sit beside the river rather than drown in it. Only in silence can intuition reveal itself as distinct from anxiety. Anxiety shouts, intuition whispers. Anxiety is urgent, intuition is timeless. You might ask, how does one practically live this? How does one distinguish in the moment when the heart races and the mind insists? I tell you, it is through repeated encounters with the unconscious, through the patient work of knowing your complexes, through the humility of saying, perhaps this is not intuition, but fear. Humility is the great corrector. Anxiety thrives on self-importance. It says, I am the one who must foresee. I am the one who must act. Intuition is humble. It says, I see what is, and I accept. Imagine you are walking in the forest and you hear a sound. Anxiety says, it is a predator. Run. Intuition says, listen, observe. You will know what it is. Anxiety leaps to conclusion. Intuition waits. Anxiety narrows the field. Intuition expands it. The empath who wishes to walk the path of individuation must cultivate this patience. Only then can you separate the false prophet of anxiety from the true voice of intuition. I once had a dream in which I stood in a great cathedral. Shadows flickered along the walls, and voices whispered in my ear, each telling me a different warning. I felt fear, confusion, the sense that doom pressed close. But then, in the dream, a single candle was lit on the altar, and its flame was steady, unmoved by the shadows. At that moment, all the whispering ceased, and I knew which voice was true. That candle is intuition. The shadows are anxiety. The cathedral is your psyche. To live well, you must learn to seek the candle, not the shadows. This is the mystical dimension of the correction I give you. Intuition comes as light, anxiety as shadow. Intuition reveals the archetype. Anxiety distorts it. Intuition integrates. Anxiety fragments. Intuition points you toward wholeness. Anxiety keeps you trapped in repetition. If you live by anxiety, you will walk in circles. If you live by intuition, you will move toward the center, toward the self, but beware. The shadow will always try to imitate the self, the false light, the false whisper, the false certainty. All these arise as tests. You must confront them. This is why the path of individuation is not smooth, but marked by trial. Each time you mistake anxiety for intuition, you are confronted with your own shadow, and each time you recognize a difference, you reclaim a piece of your wholeness. The empath must especially be aware of the anima and animus within. These inner figures often carry the messages of intuition from the unconscious, yet if they are distorted by shadow, they will speak with the voice of anxiety instead. The negative anima fills the man with dread, with suspicion. with irrational foreboding. The negative animus fills the woman with harsh judgments, with inner voices declaring catastrophe. But when integrated, the anima and animus carry true intuition, guiding the conscious mind toward deeper harmony. Thus, your relationship with these inner figures determines whether you live by anxiety or by intuition. Let us look again to the body. The empath often complains of exhaustion, of feeling drained, of carrying burdens that are not theirs. This is the somatic evidence of confusion. Anxiety drains, intuition strengthens. Anxiety leaves you weaker, restless, sleepless. Intuition leaves you clearer, even if the message is difficult. If what you call intuition leaves you depleted, it is not intuition, it is anxiety in disguise. The body will always tell the truth, but you must learn its language. In the old alchemical texts, there is an image of the nigredo, the blackening stage of transformation. Anxiety belongs here. It is the chaos before the order, the darkness before the dawn. Intuition, however, belongs to the albedo and rubedo, the whitening and reddening, the stages of integration and illumination. To mistake the nigredo for the rubedo is to think the fire is the gold, but the fire is only the beginning. Anxiety is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning, the stirring of the unconscious. If you cling to it, you never move beyond the blackening. If you discern, you pass through to illumination. So I say to you, do not fear anxiety, but do not worship it either. Anxiety is a messenger, but not the message. It tells you that something in the unconscious seeks recognition, but it does not tell you what that something is. Intuition reveals the content. Anxiety only signals its presence. To mistake one for the other is to remain forever at the threshold, never entering the temple. The empath is called to the temple. Your sensitivity is a gift, but it must be refined. Without refinement, it is chaos. With refinement, it is vision. You stand at the edge of mystery, and your task is to walk through, not to tremble forever outside. Anxiety will always try to hold you back, whispering, danger, danger. Intuition will say, come, see, choose the voice you follow. You see now how subtle the difference is, and yet how vital. If you live guided by anxiety, you will live enslaved to repetition. The same fears will circle endlessly, disguised as foresight, and you will never escape the labyrinth. But if you cultivate discernment, you step into the deeper rhythm of intuition, which is not repetition but revelation. Revelation does not repeat endlessly. It unfolds, it opens new ground, it leads you further into the mystery of your own wholeness. The empath's gift, when purified, is not the endless trembling of borrowed fears, but the capacity to see into the archetypal fabric of life. When you learn to separate anxiety from intuition, you become not a Cassandra doomed to torment, but a bridge between conscious and unconscious. between self and collective, you become like Hermes, the messenger who moves freely between worlds, carrying the truth without being consumed by it. But let us not be naive. This purification requires suffering. It requires the descent into your own shadows, the confrontation with your complexes, the willingness to face the wounds that birthed your hypervigilance. Many empaths were born in households where love was conditional, where safety was uncertain, where one had to sense the atmosphere to survive. What you call intuition may be this old adaptation, the vigilance of the wounded child. You must bring compassion to this child, hold them, tell them they are safe now. Only then will their trembling subside and make space for the voice of the self. Dreams will help you here. In dreams, your shadow child often appears as a lost figure, a neglected boy, a frightened girl. To embrace them in the dream is to begin the healing. Each time you turn towards them, you reclaim your power. Each time you reject them, you strengthen the confusion. Intuition will not flourish while the shadow child is ignored, for their cries will always rise as anxiety. The self is patient. It waits beneath the storm, like the still point at the center of the wheel. The wheel spins with fear, with projections, with borrowed emotions, but the center does not move. To hear intuition is to stand at that center. To be caught in anxiety is to cling to the rim. Do not be ashamed if you find yourself at the rim, for this is the human condition. But know that you are called to the center. My own work has always pointed toward this center, toward individuation, toward the union of opposites. Anxiety is one pole, intuition the other. The task is not to eliminate anxiety. It will always exist, but to balance it, to integrate it, to know its voice without mistaking it for the whole. In alchemy, both nigredo and rubedo are necessary. Anxiety darkens so that intuition may illuminate. Without one, the other cannot be known. But do not dwell forever in the blackening. Walk through it into the light. And here I must speak of trust. Anxiety does not trust. It clings to control. Intuition trusts even in the unknown. This is why intuition feels calm, even when it reveals difficulty. It trusts the deeper order, the archetypal unfolding. Anxiety resists the unknown, fighting against it. Intuition walks into it with quiet assurance. For the empath, this is the hardest lesson, to trust what is revealed without grasping, without panicking, without overlaying your own fear upon it. You may ask, what then is the practice? I tell you, the practice is presence. When you feel a surge of sensation, pause. Do not immediately declare, this is my intuition. Ask instead, what is its texture? Does it agitate or does it steady? Does it confuse or clarify? Does it drain or strengthen? The answers to these questions reveal the voice you are hearing. Over time, you will know without asking. You will feel the difference as clearly as day and night. In myth, heroes are often tested by false guides. They meet figures who pretend to help but lead into danger. These figures are your anxieties, masquerading as intuition. To pass the test, the hero must learn discernment, must recognize the true guide when he appears. So it is with you. Your psyche will present both true and false voices. Your work is to discern, to test, to listen deeply until the real guide emerges. I want you to imagine yourself now standing before two doors. Behind one lies anxiety, behind the other intuition. Anxiety's door is painted brightly. Urgent signs flashing, enter now, or all is lost. Intuition's door is plain, unadorned, almost hidden. Anxiety clamors, intuition waits. Which door will you choose? Most choose the loud door, for its urgency seduces, but the true way is the quiet door. To walk through it is to enter the temple of your own wholeness. And so, my friends, I leave you with this final truth. Intuition is never anxious. It may warn, but it does not tremble. It may reveal danger, but it does so with calm clarity. If what you feel agitates, confuses, and drains you, it is not intuition but shadow. If what you feel steadies, clarifies, and strengthens you, it is intuition, the whisper of the self, the empath's correction. Then is simple but profound. Do not mistake the tremors of your wounds for the voice of your soul. Do not call every shadow a prophecy. Do not let the trickster rule you. Instead, walk the path of discernment. Hold your shadow child. Listen to your dreams. Taste every voice and trust the calm center when it speaks. In doing so, you will no longer live as a prisoner of anxiety, but as a participant in revelation. You will walk not as one burdened by borrowed fears, but as one guided by inner light. You will live not in confusion, but in clarity. You will embody not the curse of Cassandra, but the wisdom of Tiresias. And in this transformation, you will discover the true power of your empathy, not to absorb endlessly, but to illuminate. Remember, intuition is the candle in the cathedral. Seek it, follow it, and it will never lead you astray.